There is a moment every man alive has experienced at least once, and most of them never talk about it. It is not the moment she leaves. It is not the moment you find out the truth. It is the moment right before, the moment where everything feels fine, where the tension is gone, where she is warm again and present again, and you start to think that maybe you were wrong all along. Maybe you were overthinking it. Maybe the version of her you fell for is still there and still choosing you. That is the most dangerous moment in any relationship. Not the argument, not the silence, the calm. Because calm can be real, or it can be manufactured. And if you cannot tell the difference, you will stay inside something that is already over. You will invest more, trust more, plan more, while the foundation underneath you is being quietly replaced. Most men do not get blindsided because they are weak or oblivious. They get blindsided because they are waiting for betrayal to look like betrayal. It never does. It looks like ordinary life. It looks like her laugh. It looks like Sunday mornings and normal conversations and a relationship that appears to be holding. But underneath all of that, there are patterns, signals that she is not fully there anymore, movements that do not match the image being presented to you. And once you know what to look for, you will never be able to unsee it. So before we go any further, I want you to be honest. How many times have you felt something was wrong but chose to stay quiet because you did not want to be the man who overreacts? How many times did your gut speak and you talked yourself out of listening? If you have been there, type "I knew" in the comments, because this is for every man who already felt it but needed someone to confirm what he was seeing. The first clue is sudden emotional warmth that appears without a reason. This is the one that gets men every single time, because it does not feel like a warning. It feels like a reward. You have been dealing with distance, maybe weeks of shorter conversations, maybe a version of her that felt slightly out of reach. You could not quite name it, but you felt it. The connection was off. The energy was different. And then one day it flips. She is softer. She is laughing more. She touches your arm the way she used to. She looks at you the way she did in the beginning. And in that moment, every defense you had built quietly disappears. You tell yourself that you were overthinking. You tell yourself the relationship is back on track. You lean back in and start trusting again. But here is what most men never consider. Guilt does not always look like distance. Sometimes guilt looks like warmth. When a woman is internally conflicted about something she is doing, she does not always shut down. She compensates. She gives you just enough softness to quiet your instincts, just enough affection to stop you from asking the question that is sitting right at the edge of your mind. And it works, because men are wired to trust how something feels. When it feels good, they stop questioning. When the warmth is there, they assume the connection is real. But warmth and connection are not the same thing. One can be performed, one cannot. So ask yourself this. Did anything actually change between you two? Did a real conversation happen? Did something shift in the dynamic that would explain this sudden softness? Or did the energy just appear one day with no clear cause? Real connection builds slowly. It deepens over time through honesty and consistency. It does not switch on overnight. When it does, that is not a sign that things are getting better. That is a sign that something needed to be covered. And the moment you feel most comfortable is usually the moment you need to be most observant. Because when your guard is down, the patterns continue without resistance. The second clue is when another man's name starts appearing in her life with no real weight behind it. She does not introduce him dramatically. She does not make a production of it. She drops the name the way you drop a name that means nothing. Casual, relaxed, almost boring. He helped her with something at work. He said something funny. He is someone she has known for a while. Nothing sounds alarming. And that is the entire strategy. Because the easiest way to hide something significant is not to bury it in secrecy. It is to make it ordinary. She is not keeping him from you. She is introducing him slowly in pieces, small enough that each one alone feels harmless. But over time, something happens in your brain. His presence becomes normalized. You stop reacting to the name. You stop registering him as someone who deserves your attention. You have placed him in the background of her life the way you place background characters in a story, peripheral, irrelevant, not worth monitoring. And that is exactly where she needs him to be, because in the background is where proximity grows without pressure. In the background is where conversations deepen without your awareness. You lose her not when the other man shows up. You lose her the moment you accept him without a single boundary. Because once you allow his presence to become normal, you have taught her something about you. You have taught her that you will absorb almost anything to avoid conflict. You have taught her that keeping the peace matters more to you than protecting your position. And from that point forward, she has two emotional spaces, yours and his. And the gap between them starts to close in silence. The third clue is a routine that stays perfectly intact, even though everything inside it has shifted. Most men expect disruption. If something is wrong, they expect the schedule to change, the habits to break, the patterns to shift in ways they can measure. But that is rarely how it works. The gym is still at the same time. The girls' nights are still on the same days. Work still runs on the same schedule. Everything checks out on the surface. And because the structure is familiar, you do not look at what is happening inside it. But here is the truth. She does not change where she goes. She changes what happens while she is there. She keeps the container exactly the same and changes the contents, and your instincts feel it. Something is slightly off. The energy when she comes home is different. She is either too composed or too distant. The timing feels a little tighter than it used to. Little details that you notice but cannot quite build into an argument, and then your logic steps in and overrides everything you felt. Because she has always gone at this time. Because the routine has never changed. Because consistency feels like loyalty. But consistency is not loyalty. Consistency is control over appearances. She knows that if the schedule never changes, you will not interrogate the details inside it. She works in the margins. The extra 30 minutes, that is easy to explain. The reply that comes 10 minutes later than it should. The shift in energy that you feel but cannot prove. None of it is big enough to confront, but all of it together is enough to make you feel crazy. And that is the real damage. Not just missing what is happening, but starting to doubt whether you can trust what you are seeing at all. The fourth clue is when your concern gets redirected back at you. You have been sitting with enough small inconsistencies that you finally decide to say something. You keep it calm, you keep it simple, no accusations, just a question. And in an instant, everything shifts. Her tone changes, her posture changes. Why are you acting like this? Do you not trust me? Why are you always so insecure? And suddenly the conversation is no longer about her behavior. It is about your emotional reaction to her behavior. And something inside you hesitates because you do not want to be the controlling man. You do not want to be the jealous man. You do not want to be the man who makes her feel trapped. So you soften, you backtrack, you start explaining yourself instead of asking the question you came in with. And just like that, the frame flips completely. You went from observing her to defending yourself. This is not an accident. This is a psychological redirect that works because it targets the one thing most men are afraid of, which is appearing weak or unreasonable. She senses that you are close to something real, so she moves the target. She makes your instinct the problem instead of her actions. And once you are defending your feelings, you are no longer evaluating her. You just want the tension to end. So you become nicer, more agreeable. You might even overcorrect. Buy her something. Give her more space. Try to repair a distance you did not create while she remains exactly where she is, calm, unbothered, watching you shrink. And the lesson she takes from that moment is that pressure on you is more effective than honesty from her. The fifth clue is a public image that looks almost too clean. You check her profile and everything looks right. She is posting. She is smiling. There are pictures of you two together. Everything appears to be functioning exactly the way it should. And you see that and you think if something was wrong, it would show. But that assumption is the vulnerability she is working with, because public image is one of the easiest things in the world to curate. What goes online is selected. It is filtered. It is placed there with intention. And the cleaner it looks, the less anyone questions what is underneath it. So while the image stays polished and stable, the real communication becomes more protected. Messages that disappear, platforms you do not know to check, conversations that exist in spaces you have never thought to look. She is not hiding by going quiet. She is hiding by staying loud in all the right places, creating a version of the relationship that feels too documented to doubt. And when the truth eventually surfaces, it does. Not just hurt because of what happened, it hurts because of how well it was hidden. You were watching the same public story everyone else was watching. And the real story was happening somewhere you were never invited to look. The sixth clue is when her emotional energy starts flowing somewhere else. This one you feel before you can name it. She is still physically present. She is still replying. She is still doing the minimum required to keep things functional, but the depth is gone. The way she used to be fully engaged when you talked has disappeared. Conversations are shorter. Her attention drifts. You say something meaningful and she gives you half of herself back. You try to connect and you can feel the distance, even though nothing obvious has changed. What happened is that her emotional investment moved. Women do not disconnect physically first. They disconnect emotionally first. They start putting their thoughts and their excitement and their attention somewhere else. And wherever that attention goes consistently, attachment follows. So while you are still trying to build something with her, she is already building it with someone else. And that repositions you without you realizing it. You go from being the center of her emotional world to being a familiar presence inside a life she is already mentally reorganizing. And the most painful part is that she might still be kind to you. She might still be decent, but the energy that used to belong entirely to you is now divided. And you can feel the division even when you cannot prove it. That feeling is not insecurity, it is accuracy. Trust it. The seventh clue is when she uses her own identity as the evidence of her loyalty. This is the most sophisticated one because it feels like reassurance. She talks about what kind of woman she is. She references her values. She says things like, I would never do that to you, or you know who I am. And because she has always carried herself a certain way, because her reputation has always matched her words, you believe it. You let her identity stand in for observation. You stop watching the behavior because the story she tells about herself is convincing enough. But here is what you need to understand. Identity is a narrative. And narratives can be maintained even when behavior contradicts them. A woman who sees herself as loyal does not always stop herself from being disloyal. She reframes it. She justifies it. She builds a version of the story in her own mind where she is still the good person. And what she is doing is understandable given the circumstances. So she can tell you who she is with complete conviction. Because in her version of events, she still is that person. And if you are only listening to who she says she is, you will never see who she is becoming. Because the gap between a person's identity and their behavior is exactly where deception lives. And the men who get hurt the most are the ones who trusted the story so completely that they stopped watching the pattern. Do not let the strength of her words replace the clarity of your eyes. Words are the easiest thing to control. Behavior over time is where the truth lives. Here is the thing that ties all 7 of these together. Cheating does not arrive with noise. It does not announce itself. It does not give you a clean moment where you can point and say that is where it started. It moves through warmth and routine and familiar names and a public image that never cracks and conversations that feel just close enough to real. It moves through your own desire to believe that the person you chose is who they say they are. And the men who see it coming are not suspicious by nature, they are observant. They learnt the difference between how something feels and what the pattern is actually showing. Feelings make you comfortable. Patterns tell you the truth. So pay attention to the patterns, not the words, not the image, not the warmth that appears without explanation. Watch what she does consistently when she thinks the pressure is off. Watch where her attention goes when she does not know you are noticing. Watch how she responds when you ask a calm and reasonable question. Those moments are not random, they are data. And a man who knows how to read that data will never be the last one to know what is happening in his own relationship. That is the standard you need to hold for yourself. Not paranoia, not suspicion for its own sake. Just clarity. Because clarity is the one thing that protects everything else.